Okay.
Hey Jabbers, welcome back. This is episode 2 of season 2. On today's episode, we are chatting with Maria Bayer about mastering sales for your wedding business. Maria is a leading sales and mindset strategist for wedding and event professionals who want to book next level clients and scale their business to multi six and seven figures. She teaches a modern sales approach that empowers clients to connect authentically, command top dollar, and achieve rapid results. Her clients often see a 2 to 10 times sales increase within a year, transforming both their businesses and their belief in what's possible. As the creator of Irresistible Selling, which we'll be chatting about today, Maria offers forward thinking strategies for fast, sustainable growth without chasing or being salesy. We love that. With over 25 million in personal sales and a background negotiating with industry giants like Target and Best Buy, she equips her clients with advanced strategies that go beyond traditional wedding industry teachings, giving them a competitive edge. A sought after speaker, Maria has shared her expertise at top industry events and with organizations such as WIPA, ILEA, ABC, B-Sage, the Wedding Pro CEO Summit, Sarah Does SEO, Rock Paper Coin, Refine Collective, and many more, as well as corporate workshops and training sessions. Through her community, speaking engagements, and authorship, Maria is elevating the wedding industry by raising the bar on what business owners can charge and how much they can earn. Welcome, Maria. Thanks for being here. We're excited to chat today.
Thank you so much, ladies. It's great to be here.
I love
I,
reading those because I feel like it's so powerful. I'm like, I need to write a bio about myself.
well, and I was going to say, as you were reading that, Carrie, I was like, I don't think I know anybody else that has such a unique bio, Maria. Like nobody in the wedding industry. There are obviously several coaches, there are people that do sales stuff, but no one is there from a kind of corporate negotiating background like you are. So I would love to know how you started this business that is now called Irresistible Selling. Why did you leave corporate and come into the wedding industry?
Oh my gosh, what a great story. And nothing that I actually planned. Like most of our stories, they have such a windy path. Like I never could have predicted that I would end up here. But the story goes that I was in finance and doing financial work, and I wanted to move up the corporate ladder. And I worked for a family-owned business, and they basically said no, that the men were going to run the company. And that was basically my sign that I needed to look for another job. So I left, and the only thing I knew was I wanted to make more money. Right. And so the first thing that came to mind was sales, because in sales, generally speaking, the more you work, the more you earn. And so I wanted to get paid for that work, and I wanted to be financially independent. I didn't want to depend on anyone. And so I just started networking and trying to find a job. And thank the Lord, I found a job in software. And at the time, software was like not a huge thing. And I didn't know anything about software, and I knew zero about selling. I knew zero. And I wasn't a natural born salesperson. Like it's interesting, like if you compare my brother and I, he can sell anything to anyone. I was the complete antithesis of that. I'm very introverted, etc. So I went into it partially too to get out of my own way and to not be so scared to be, in a room full of people I didn't know. So anyway, I got this job, and I remember telling my boss at the other company that I'm going to leave and I'm going to make 50% more. And he's like, Maria, that's not possible. And I said, oh, not possible. Okay. Well, at that point, I'd already committed. So I'm like, it's sink or swim now. So I left that job, went to that software company. And the guy that hired me said, I don't care if you don't know how to sell, I can teach you how to sell. He hired me because I knew finance and I was selling financial software, and he needed somebody that could speak to somebody that knew finance. So, like a CFO, et cetera. So I got that job. My boss left not long after that. So I floundered and I got let go from that job. So I didn't make 50% more. I got laid off. So I felt as bad as you would imagine that I could feel. So I said, either I go back to my other day job and go back into finance, or I have to find another job in software. And thank God I found another job in software. And even bigger deal, I had a manager that was like a dad to me. He was phenomenal. And I remember going to him at one point in the beginning and I said, I can't sell the way the guys are selling. Like that's just not me. And I know me because I'm not going to do it. Like my body will rebel against me, right? Like I cannot be that salesy, pushy, stereotypical salesperson. And he said, Maria, you do not have to do that. There's lots of ways to sell. That's not the only way to sell. And that alone was a light bulb moment for me. Like I literally really didn't know that I didn't have to be that way. And he said, your strength lies in your connecting with people. You connect with people, you communicate with people, do more of that, get in front of more people, connect with them. And I promise you, you will be successful. Within a handful of months, I started booking a lot more clients. I won an award in our office for like the top salesperson. Like I hit my stride and I figured out a way to do it that felt really good and aligned with me and who I was. And it felt wonderful. And then I went on to book over 25 million in sales. So long story short, I got burned out of doing that because they eat you up and spit you out in that industry. And most people last only a few years because it is so cutthroat. I lasted over 10 and I thought, this is just enough. I can't do this anymore. But it's hard to walk away when you're making a lot of money and you're good at that. And you think to yourself, what else can I do? This is what I'm good at. So I couldn't see, I had blinders on and I just thought all I can do is like sell for somebody else. I didn't quite put it together that I could teach people how to sell. And so long story short, I ended up meeting this photographer. We became really good friends. And she said to me, I work with, I lead this like photography group locally. And there's like a couple hundred of us. Why don't you come and speak to us? And I'm like, okay, what do you need? And she's like, we need to learn how to sell. We don't know how to sell. We know how to take really great pictures, but we have no idea how to sell. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, I could do that. And that's how it was born. And the rest is history. In fact, at that point, I started doing like some consulting, and then my wedding planner named Joan called me after my wedding and said, hey, I heard that you teach sales. And I said, yeah, I do. And she thought she was hiring me to do like an elevator pitch. And instead, I told her after talking to her, I'm like, I think I had created a class for interior designers. That's another story for another day. But I said, I think I can just customize it for you and your team, because she needed her team to start taking inquiry calls. And so I said, let me do this. Charged her thousands of dollars, right? So if you hear her talk now, she's like, I thought I was going to spend like $500 and be done with it, right? And instead I charged her thousands of dollars, taught her team how to sell. They literally came out of the gate. They doubled their prices. They started booking clients left and right. Joan was able to cherry pick her clients. And then now Joan is one of the coaches, as you know, in irresistible selling. So that is how I got into the wedding industry. She was the one that got me in it. And she did so well that she helped me like announce it to like the Chicago area. That's where we lived at the time. And so she got me on the map. So I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Joan. She's been amazing. And I know my clients love her as well. So
that is wild. And I don't think I knew the full story. Oh, guys, sorry. Pause. The dogs, I muted myself while you were talking. Sorry, I'm gonna do a
I don't hear
timestamp.
them.
You
I don't
can't?
hear them
Okay.
either.
Okay, perfect. Then I'm just gonna
Like,
do
can you hear my baby crying in the back?
No.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Then
Yeah.
we'll continue on. I did a timestamp for us to edit this out, but
Okay.
okay. I don't think I knew that story, Maria. And the wedding industry is obviously a fascinating place, as we know, but did you realize when you got into it, like how lost we all were? Because I think we're mostly right. We go into it because we're creatives and we like that part of it, but we're not all like not everyone is capable or has the tools to sell or to be a good business owner, and they're like, I can produce a wedding and it's going to look amazing, but I have no idea how to even get my first client. Like, did you kind of start customizing your program, realizing like, oh my God, you guys are all the same. You all struggle in the same places, or was it tailored a little bit as you worked with people?
I definitely tailored it. I took as you know, we have calls. And so whenever I heard the same question over and over, then I would start editing things and revising it, knowing that, okay, this is a huge question that people have. So yeah, I did revise it. I never really thought, oh, they don't know what they're doing. I just realized that I had to really spell things out and assume that they didn't know anything about selling. And that actually was like a really good thing to do because then anybody can pick it up, anybody can understand it. And I wanted to make it so usable that you could read one part of it or listen to one part of the audio and go apply it. And that was my goal. But yes, we've done revisions. And then we didn't have, so right now we have, as you know, the playbook, which is sort of if you took everything from irresistible selling and wrapped a bow around it and put it into a process, that would be it. We didn't have that in the very beginning. That was something that we put together after time of having lots of calls and talking to a lot of all of you and understanding, okay, what did you do that worked? What didn't work? And putting that together into a cohesive process where somebody literally could walk in and be like, step one, step two, step three, and really have as much meat in there as possible so that you could hit the ground running. And so that part is newish. It wasn't available in the very beginning, but it's been refined over the years now. And now it's a rock solid process.
And Maria, can you give just for the listeners, because obviously Gabby and I are part of Irresistible Selling and no, but can you give more of like a base of like what exactly people are getting and kind of how it works if they were to sign up?
Sure. So irresistible selling is something that I created very intentionally and very intentionally based on my experience in other programs, what I liked, what I didn't like. I wanted to create something that was sort of a hybrid between a course, what people think of as a course, and a mastermind and coaching. So I like to think of it as a hybrid of all those three things, all those three components, because it is a little bit of those pieces. So you have the program itself, which is 5 modules that are really the fundamentals that you need to know to sell anything, whether you're selling in the wedding industry or anything else, because I wasn't in the wedding industry, I was in software, but I know how to break it down into steps to how to sell. So we teach you everything from what to do from the time someone inquires to how do you book them on the spot for, your top package, not your base package. How can you raise your fees and get more money? How can you build value? And building value is sort of the cornerstone of what I teach because it's the most important thing you can learn. Because the better you're able to communicate your value, the more someone will pay, right? And so many people, not just in the wedding industry, I've even seen this with seasoned salespeople, they don't know how to sell very well. And so if you can't communicate how you're different and what makes you special and how you can specifically help someone, and you're not asking the right questions, you're just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. And you're using salesy, gimmicky techniques that nobody likes. And especially today's buyer is all about transparency. So you can't be salesy. You can't be pushy. So we teach you everything about building value, mindset. And what's interesting about mindset is I'm gonna say something about Joan for a second because she's a great story. She echoed what a lot of people in the original groups said that worked with me was, what is this mindset woo-woo stuff that you're teaching? Because what was it, 2011, I think we started, no, 2013. So back then, mindset was not a household word. It was very woo, and it was just like becoming a thing. And so they did not believe in it. And I said, well, I can't prove to you why it works. I just know it works, and just do what I tell you to do. And I'm telling you it's going to work. And now it's so funny because within like, I don't even remember the time frame, but Joan was like, okay, I stand corrected. I really, really, really love this stuff. And I'm putting, this is a little bit of a sidetrack if you might indulge me for a second. So
I love
she said,
those.
I'm putting this on my vision board to spend the summer in Italy. This is many years ago. I forgot about that. Fast forward to, I don't know, it was that maybe that summer or the next summer after that. I'm in Mexico with my husband for our anniversary. I went off the grid, shut down my phone. The last day I put my phone on and I'm checking my emails, and there's an email from Joan. And she said, and I'm reading it, and I had to read it twice because I was so confused. I'm like, what is she talking about? And then my husband's looking at, Tim's looking at me and he's like, are you crying? What's wrong? And I'm like, oh my God, Joan's in Italy. She spent the summer in Italy. Like she's there now with
Oh
her
my God.
family. Like she's doing this, and this is high season in Chicago. So her team is running her business while she's in Italy. I was so proud, so happy for her, so excited for her. And now she's done it twice. She did it last summer, by the way.
Oh
So that
my
was summer number two.
God.
And now she's got like 4 kids. So,
Go,
so
Joan. If you're listening to
Yeah.
this, we are all very, very proud of you and
Yeah.
we're hope to follow in your footsteps.
Yeah.
yeah, so I just had to do that shout because it was such a
Yeah.
wonderful story. But getting back to the program, so mindset's a big piece. We teach you one of the things that makes the program have a lot of hang time. People come back after 10 years and still do the
Yeah.
program. Like that almost never happens with today's programs. It's because we teach you psychology, like buying psychology and how people make decisions. And that doesn't change over time. So it's lovely to see people come back year after year and go through the program again to refresh their skills, especially as they level up and their clientele levels up. They want to go through it with a fresh lens and make sure that they're building the value, they're going through all the steps that we walk them through. So we teach you all of the psychology and how to connect with people, objections, and money. So we teach you a lot about pricing and proposals and how do you position proposals and how do you not chase them? How do you get them to book on the spot without being pushy or salesy? So that's the curriculum part of it. And I give you lifetime access to that because I know that you're not going to absorb it overnight.
Mhm.
And I want you to use it as you go. And I want you to come back and keep doing it over and over again, because as you level up and as you raise your prices, you're going to want to go through it again. And we give you support. So this is where sort of the mastermind and the coaching come in, right? And we have support in the Facebook community where you can get answers, to your questions from both Joan and I, as well as people like you, which is super valuable because everyone in there is pretty high caliber, right? It's a pretty high ticket to entry, and you don't really get people that are just, hobbyists.
Mhm.
So really, really impactful. And then we have the what we call A&A calls, so action and accountability calls. And those are basically like Q&As where you can come on and ask questions and we can have more of a conversation. And this is why this is important, because while it's good that I can give you lots of strategies and techniques and things to do, not everything is cut and dry, right? Not everything is a one size fits all. And depending on your market, depending on where you're at in your business, I want to give you very tailored advice. So you can come and ask questions like, hey, I gave this proposal, or we had this conversation and this is how it went. What can I do here? And we can kind of reverse engineer and figure out what could you do differently next time and what can you do now to maximize this opportunity that's in front of you, or how can you win this client back? So there's lots of reasons why you want to come on. And the way I structure them, which is intentionally, again, very different, is I also make them quasi mastermind calls. So I've recognized over the years that the level of experience with the collective experience that we have in the group is so high that you want to benefit from the advice of other people. So oftentimes in those calls, I'll say, hey, has anyone had this experience? What did you do? And that also, because I might be smart, but I don't know everything. And I want you to, like, you have experiences, Gabby and Carrie, that I haven't. And I want my clients to benefit from that. And that's part of the masterminding piece of it.
Hmm.
So I really want to give people multiple ways that they can get help and incorporate this into their business and also meet people. That's part of the value of what they're getting, is this high caliber group of people that you are rubbing shoulders with. Because we all know how hard it is to meet people in the wedding industry, especially if you're like a photographer or a stationer and you want to meet with more planners. I'm sure both of you get deluged with emails from people you don't know, right? Saying, hey, I'd love to pick your brain, or hey, I'd love to take you to lunch, right? Because they want referrals. Well, when you're in a community like this, it just makes it so much easier for you to meet each other and get visibility that you might not get just in the wild, so to speak.
Hmm. I think that's one of the main reasons why I love it is having that hybrid of being able to like listen, absorb, and take action on all the information myself. But I have been able to connect with a lot of people and people that don't even live where I live, and like those monthly calls are great. And I've definitely come on and been like asking questions and left feeling so much better about a situation because I got advice or reassurance or, stuff like that from other people. So I think that's great. I love that you shared Joan's story. Because I think, that's how this program is changing people's lives, right? Letting them, I guess, work on the mindset. Because Maria and I talked yesterday about mindset. We were on a call, and it really is something you have to come back to every year. I think, going through it for me, I even try to go through it yearly in January because
Mhm.
this is like a busy time of sales and booking. And it's good just to be reminded of things that you forgot to do, or you're like, oh, wait, I used to do that. Why don't I do that anymore? Ask those questions in the sales calls. But for me, I think I just love being in community with people. And I think it's also helped me to not lower my prices. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I've held a steadfast and even raised them because of this group. And last year, I booked a client that way. She came back to me and wanted me to match another planner, but she's like, I really love you. And I said no. And she ended up booking with me.
Mm.
And so I think once you hit those price points and get those clients and you hold steadfast, it like makes you want to be like, I'm gonna keep my prices where they are or raise them,
Exactly.
because you're like, you feel so confident and
Yeah.
your mindset does start to shift.
Yeah. And don't you think too that being in that community, it's one thing like I've worked one-on-one with clients before, or I'm sorry, with coaches before. And it's one thing when you hear a coach tell you to do something because your brain can say, "Oh, well, maybe she did it or he did it, but that wouldn't work for me." But if you hear a community of people that you respect because they're all booking like not inexpensive clients, if you hear them all telling you, raise your prices, you're charging too little, or say no, don't give in to that client, then you know that there's some validity to it because you have all that social proof. Because that's the most powerful thing we have is social proof, and that's what we listen to. So recognizing that that's why I want people to leverage the community because that can be a much more powerful way to change your perspective than just working even one-on-one with a coach, even if the coach is really good. It just is to
Mhm.
me anyway, I feel like it's so much more helpful to be in a community of people that are doing really good things because it helps me shift my mindset a lot faster.
Mm-hmm. Because in
Yeah.
the Facebook group, I know Gabby, you've posted there's like a ring the bell when you've accomplished, one of your top goals. And I know Gabby, you've booked like one of your highest paying clients. And I think that's so fun to share because I'm like, okay, if Gabby can book that, I can book that. It's like a ripple effect, I think.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think you have it, like you said, the program is all these aspects are so important because you have the strategy. You're not just going into it saying, well, they told me to do this, so I'm going to do this. There's proof, there's psychology. You even brought up the whole values part. And that for me was the biggest light bulb moment when I took this or this program because we all sell the same thing. At the end of the day, we all sell the exact same bullet points on a list, right?
Yep.
But how we appease our clients' problems or how we go about fixing those problems essentially become personal to us and how we present that value. And when I switched over, so you know what's so funny? like Carrie, I also go through this program every year. And I think Maria, your team gets an email from me every year because I can't log in. And it's because I have to just sign the new.
The terms of service. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so every year I'm like, I'm so sorry. I still can't log in. I can't remember what you have me do every year to do this. So anyway, I got logged in but I recently changed in my brochures that I send out to people. Instead of having bullet points, I kind of tried doing something more that's your role and our role. And it has more so value added words that come in our role. So like, I don't know, for example, call all your vendors so that you don't have to be picking up the phone a week before like addressing all the stuff that is concerning to them and the reason why they hire a wedding planner in our case. So anyway, all that to say it is evergreen information and evergreen content that, like we said, we're 10 plus years into the business and we are still referring to the information that you share in there.
I love
But anyway, we have a million questions. Like I feel like
Yeah.
there's just not going to be enough time in an hour to talk about this. Okay. What would you say is the biggest challenge? I guess like what's the biggest challenge that you see people experiencing in their sales right now in their business? And maybe we can talk as wedding pros in general, since that's kind of the industry that most of our listeners are in. But that biggest, like, I don't know how to sell, and what's the reason?
Great question. I think for most people, it's such an unnatural thing. And what they think of it as is the stereotypical salesperson. And it doesn't have to be that way. Like for me, I thought I had to be that way to be good at sales, or I even had a belief that I had to sell everyone if I was going to be good at sales. And when I was able to shift and understand that, I don't have to sell everybody, right? And in fact, that's one of my tenets that I teach. Like, you do not want to sell everybody. We focus on value over volume and making sure it's the right fit because we want referrals.
Mm.
So if you book a bad client, you really don't want a referral. So it's understanding that you don't have to book everybody, and that I think it's really just to understand that you don't have to sell that way to be good at selling. And one of my favorite compliments that I ever got from one of my clients was, it feels almost effortless to book clients, and it doesn't feel like selling. And that's music to my ears, because it doesn't feel like selling in the traditional, like stereotypical sense. But I would argue that everyone's in sales no matter what they do for a living, right? You're always communicating your ideas, your beliefs, your preferences, your opinions, right? It doesn't matter. I had a client years ago who said, my boyfriend needs to read this to get a job because everything you teach would work for a job interview. And she was right, because I use those things in job interviews. I use those to get raises. I use that, when negotiating anything, or you don't have to be a business owner. So I would argue that everyone is in sales, right? And when you're a business owner, you are essentially a salesperson. You just happen to sell wedding planning services or photography services, or you're selling stationery services or whatever, but you're in sales. That is your primary role. And you need to learn how to do it, because if you're not doing it and you shy away from it, you're always going to struggle, right? If you stay in business. And that's why most people don't stay in business, because they don't sell. And that breaks my heart, because we have no shortage of starving artists in the world, as you know. Right? So it's not just about talent. It's about understanding how to run a business. But the first thing that comes is sales, because sales funds everything in your business. So the thing that I like to, if I have a soapbox, it's the faster you learn how to sell, the faster you earn money. Like it's completely correlated, because everyone tells me, I wish I had found you sooner. I wish I had invested sooner. I wish I had learned this sooner. Where have you been all my life? Like those types of things, because this is something that every person, every human should know this, right? But certainly if you own a business and you want to make money, you need to know this. And whether you work with me or anybody else, just find somebody that you align with, that speaks your language, that believes what you believe, and align yourself with them, because that's going to be money that will pay you for the rest of your life. Everything that I teach, I've used for years and years and years. It's made me money for years and years and years. That's the thing that I wish people could understand. Like, if you learn this, you're going to make so much more money. You'll raise your income ceiling, because not only are you going to book more of those clients, you're going to book them for more money because you're going to raise your rates dramatically. You're going to book your top packages, not your base package. So what you learn, you will make money on for the rest of your life. You will increase the amount that is possible for you to earn. So that's why I get excited about it. That's why I'm like, you need this.
You're like selling me all over again about joining the program, and I've already joined.
I know. I was like, oh, I can't wait to go back and listen. I know most people, I think even for myself, when I was chatting with you initially before even buying the program, I think everyone's thought is like, okay, it's really like slimy. I don't want to feel like a salesy person. And I think I even struggle with that sometimes, like going into a call with a potential client, I'm like trying to sell myself, but I'm like, I don't want to feel like I'm just trying to get your money. So I guess what would you say are some key components so people don't feel that way and they feel more confident when selling in their business?
That really great question. And that's important, because if you feel like what you're saying is pushy or slimy, you better believe it's coming across that way to your potential client. So what you're thinking in your head and how you're feeling in your heart is going to shine through, and your client's going to feel that. So that's why we kind of start with mindset. Sales to me is more like you're a consultant, right? Someone comes to you because they have that you have something that they need, it's something that they want, something that they can't do themselves. So your job is to communicate how you can help them. And part of that job is asking the right questions to uncover what's important to them and why. Not just, are you looking for red ones or blue ones? How many of these do you want? Right? That's not what we talk about. We talk more about what's important to you and why is that important. It's really, really critical for you to understand that. And the more you can get to that, the more the person that you're talking to is going to not only see that you're different, right? Because part of what I want you to do is stand out. So by asking them questions nobody else is asking, you're going to stand out, right? In the very best way. And you're going to get to the heart of what's important to them. And then you can speak to that. Sales isn't about a spiel and throwing stuff at the wall. It's about listening to what that client is, what's important to them. Sometimes they don't know that off on the surface. So sometimes you have to dig in a little bit. So when you understand that, then they can connect with what's important to them. And then when they get into that headspace, that's emotional, right? People make decisions emotionally and justify them rationally. Everyone across the board. I don't care who you are. So you need to connect with that emotional component, because if you keep it on a factual or like bullet points or features, if you stick to that, what they're going to do is they're going to take a look at your proposal with 18 bullet points and someone else's with 24 and say, oh, I get more with this. I'm going to go with them. But if you connect with that person and you understand what's important to them, oh, I want, this flower for my wedding because, I planted this flower with my grandmother when I was growing up and she's no longer with us. So I want to feel like she's here. If no one else asked her that question, guess who wins?
Well, and you know what's crazy? I feel like a lot of this is just business owners need to listen. And we are so focused, like again, our natural thought about selling is we're so focused on pitching that we don't think to say, let's actually connect with these people because we're going to be part of one of the best days of their lives. We need to all get along and we need to understand their vision because we want to do our best job and we want them to feel their best on the day, and listening to both things that they light up about. Like if they tell us about how the dog is going to be the ring bearer. I mean, I have so many of my couples have dogs, and we talk about dogs for probably 15 minutes out of our 20-minute call.
I
And
love it.
I know that if I reply to that email and say, I can't wait for Snowy to be walking down the aisle with that ring, I'll make sure that it's tied securely on the collar, then I am like 95% sure I got them because we connected over that. And genuinely, I'm not pretending to
Right.
like dogs. Like I truly love dogs. So I think we can cue in, but I think we're so programmed to like have this list of like, what's your guest count? What's your venue? Do you want to start at 4 p.m.? That we don't like, let's just have actual conversations with our clients, our potential clients on these consult calls, but also to your point, make sure we're asking questions that will lead to answers that share emotional things about their wedding day. And I think when people don't realize that, they're just so programmed to be a robot and ask factual questions, which is not it.
Right, right. And I think sometimes understanding to your earlier question, Carrie, about how do you how do you approach sales differently and not be afraid of it and not, if you understand that sometimes it has to do with psychology and that people look at it differently, it helps to shift that mindset much more easily, right? Than trying to convince somebody that, well, you're selling, but you're not really selling, and you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people will have whatever beliefs they have about sales, but sometimes it really helps to understand. It's kind of like understanding that having, boundaries, right? I just talked
Mhm.
about this in another podcast where we all struggle with boundaries. I don't care who you are. We all struggle with it. And sometimes the easier way to shift that is to understand that when you don't have boundaries, people take advantage of you and they don't
Mm,
respect you.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so it's a sign of professionalism. It's a sign of, well, professionalism is the best word I can think of when you do have those boundaries. And so you want that with your clients. So you want to have boundaries. So sometimes when you hear it framed in that way, it makes it so much easier to understand because you could disagree all you want, but you can't buck human nature. Like we are wired the way we're wired, and everyone's wired the same way. It's just like with little kids. Like if you didn't discipline them at all, if you let them get up and go to sleep anytime they wanted and eat whatever they wanted, like they would never have any discipline and never like respect you as a parent. So it's a similar concept. But sometimes just understanding the psychology background to that helps you look at things differently, and it
Yeah.
helps shift into that CEO role, which we need to do more of.
I think it's also I think gaining confidence for me, I've also gone into these calls being like, you know what, I'm interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing me because I've learned over the years that some clients just aren't the right fit. And so I think that thought process has also helped me just to relax and be myself because I'm also like, I'm probing to see like, are we even a good fit? Because as planners, we are so intimately like intertwined over a year that we have to get along. And so
Absolutely.
I think that's also really key for people to remember. I think it really helps you just to feel like you're not being like salesy.
Yeah. And in fact, there's even one of the things that which you all know, but maybe your listeners who aren't in the program don't know, but one of my favorite things to say to a potential client is whether you hire me or another planner, photographer, whatever, coach, you, you need to be comfortable with the person that you pick. You need to be able to communicate really easily with the person you pick because you're going to be arm in arm for however many months. And we need to, the more you're able to communicate with them and share with them your concerns, your needs, your questions, the better experience you're going to have and the better we can serve you. So just saying that helps disarm them because
mhm,
it shows them I'm not here just for the buck. I'm not here just to sell you, even if you're not a good fit. And I love that for both people. I love that for
Mhm.
you as a service provider to take the pressure off of you, but I love it for the client too, because it shows them your integrity.
Yeah. Do you think, like, I was just thinking about this when we were talking, but do you think we're scared to sell because we're scared, there's a fear of rejection? Like, are we just scared of it, of them saying no? Or what is it about it in a psychological way that really freaks us out?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things going on. I think there's absolutely a fear of rejection. I think there's imposter syndrome,
Mm,
like I'm not worth what I'm
yeah.
charging, or I hear a lot, I wouldn't necessarily spend this much on my wedding, but this is what I
Right.
charge. That's a big one,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Um, so there's a lot of that. And I think there's a lot of just deep-seated beliefs about talking about money, right? I think,
Yeah.
and I don't want to generalize, but we were raised the way we were raised, and a
Yeah.
lot of people were raised a similar way in that you don't talk about money or you don't toot your horn, you don't brag about yourself. So we have to understand that we can't work with it if we don't acknowledge it and understand it. So I think acknowledging that we didn't come out of the womb talking about money like it was no big deal. So we have to address that and say, okay, I know I'm not comfortable talking about money, but here's some ways to shift that perspective so that it's much more comfortable for you. And also, too, I think with the way we've laid out our process, since it is very different than most people, it helps support not feeling salesy when you're talking about money
Mm-hmm.
too. So I think
Mm-hmm.
the way you take people through your process makes a difference as well. But I do think psychologically, you've got all these things working in your head in the background that you need to be aware of so that you can acknowledge it and then start to shift it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And okay, so we were just saying when we started the podcast in 2020, like let's put 2024 in the past because
Yes.
it was a little rocky. We all hurt a little bit. But something that's come up over the last few years is this concept of ghosting. And so if anybody does not know what ghosting means, essentially it's when you don't get a response. It could be any type of email that you send out, but you essentially don't get a response. And this happens a lot with wedding pros where a client will inquire. So again, they took the first step to
Right.
inquire. They asked. We maybe had a call or we didn't even get to that point and we reply in some way, shape, or form with a proposal or just a link to get on a call. And then it's crickets. Nobody answers ever. We're trained to follow up a couple times.
Mhm.
And I do think you teach amazing follow up responses and ways to get that back. But what would you say to someone who's listening, like that has faced a never ending amount of ghosting recently? Like, what's the problem here?
Yeah. I wish I could give you a like one size fits all answer, but I think it's multifaceted. And I think part of it is there's always going to be, especially in today's generation, plus with today's technology,
Hmm.
it's so easy to click a button and inquire, right? So I think there's just always going to be some percentage of people that are not going to be a good fit regardless. And that's when my philosophy is let your process do its job. And if you qualify well enough in your sales process, it'll filter them out. So instead of them ghosting you and looking at it from a ghosting perspective, it's really, oh, my process did its job and it filtered them out because I don't want you even talking to them if they're not a good fit for you because I need to preserve your head, I need to preserve your time, and I want to preserve your confidence because that's really important. So I don't want you on the phone with people that aren't a good fit. Because even if you know it mentally, because I've done it myself a million times, I get on the phone, I know they're not a good fit. Then, right, they don't work with you, but you still take the
Yeah.
ding on your
Yeah.
confidence, even though in your head you knew they weren't a good fit. So I don't even want them getting to that point as much as I can, prevent that from happening. So I think from that perspective, your process did its job and filtered them out. For some people, it could be that they're not at the right price point. A lot of times what you need to understand from a buying psychology perspective is people pay for what they value and value what they pay for. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
priced too low, if you're priced in the sea of competition, like I look at marketing and let's just say like the whole community of wedding pros just in the US, let's say. And it's like a pyramid. And this is true for any industry, it doesn't matter. And in the bottom of the pyramid is where all the buyers, most of the buyers and most of the service providers are. And then as you get toward the top of that pyramid, you've got the ultra wealthy and the very high end vendors, right? Like my husband's really into cars, and there's like cars that cost like $1
Oh
million,
my
$2 million. Like you can't even buy one unless you've owned two others. Like there's all kinds of crazy things with cars. Um, so that's where the pyramid is. But if you're priced in that bottom tier, you're competing with a lot of competition. And so what people don't understand is the way to get out of that competition is to raise your prices to get into that next tier because people pay for what they value. If you want to get to that next tier of clientele and you want to get away from a lot of the ghosting, people that have more money are not going to be typically inquiring with 100 vendors and ghosting all of them, right? They're going to be more serious. They are going to value what you do more, and you have to be at the right price point. So if you're priced too low, they're going to wonder what's wrong, or they're going to assume that you're just a beginner or you're not that good, et cetera. So there's a whole pricing psychology there because people equate value with price. So oftentimes when we're being ghosted, the answer is you need to raise your prices so that you can get kind of out of that sea of competition and into that next level, and that level of buyer that much more values what you do, right? A lot of times people have said, and I'm sure you've heard this in the group, is, I raised my prices and then the next client I booked was so much easier than the last ones I booked
Every
because
time.
yeah,
Yep.
because you're in that like pricing limbo, I call
Yeah.
it, where you're too high for the people below you and you're too low for the next level. So by raising your price, you get into that next level. And then the people at that lower level don't inquire anymore,
Yeah.
and you get inquiries from the higher level. So
I
there's
was just,
all of that
yeah.
going on.
I was just thinking how, like, when you do have those clients where you have the call and you're like, nailed it, like, it's totally going to work. And then they like immediately email you after the proposal and they're like, love it, let's book. And it is such a confidence booster because you're like, they didn't question my value at all. Like, they saw it. And I think those are like so reaffirming. And then you're like, that was easy. And then it kind of propels you to be like, I can do this again and again and again.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it feels like you're in the flow, right? It
Mm-hmm.
feels like, oh my God, this is so aligned. It feels easy. I'm not explaining myself for 2 hours. It flows. And there's a huge difference. You can feel it. The energy is different. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
And I think with the ghosting epidemic, I guess what we call it, um, I think for myself too, I try to say like maybe the universe is telling me like this isn't a good fit and just to forget about it and move on and not waste my energy on it because I could sit there and like stew all day of like, was my email response bad? Did they think I was too expensive? But if I just sort of let it go, I feel like it opens it up for new inquiries to come in as well.
That's huge. In fact, we've had that. I don't know if you remember, but one of the girls was a photographer. She was asking questions about booking. I think it was like the sister of a prior client, and she really wanted to book this client. She didn't. She was very upset. And I said, something better is on its way. And there's something about letting go of that. And sometimes, to your point, the universe does you a favor. It knows what you need more than you need it, know what you need it. And it opens the door to something bigger. And sure enough, she got something for like that month that was in like a dream destination or something like that, that she could never have known in the moment. But again, that's one of the fun things that we can do in the community is to remind each other of that. Like when you do lose, a potential client that you really wanted, I mean, we're all the same. We all feel bad about it if we lose a client. I've lost lots of clients that I really wanted to work with me. But it's really wonderful to have that community where they boost you back up and they remind you. You may not see it now, but I promise you that something bigger is coming and you might have dodged a bullet. And I
Yes.
think she found out later that she dodged a big bullet with
Yep.
So it's so nice to like figure it out later, right? Be like,
yeah.
oh,
And you don't always, but when you
no, yeah,
do, it's sweet. Yeah.
yeah. So, kind of getting to our last questions, Maria, but typically for a lot of, wedding industry folks, we send a proposal after we get off the call. What would you say is sort of the best way for business owners to kind of close in on that proposal?
Yeah. So I can't give all the secrets away,
Yeah.
but part of what I like to do with proposals is um, I know that there's different people that charge differently. So there's some people, especially planners, that might charge a percentage. So their pricing is their pricing. But one of the things that I like to do in the program as a whole is I want to stack the odds in your favor of winning that client, knowing that human nature is what it is. And I can't promise you 100% that if you do everything quote unquote right, that you'll book that client. But I do know from doing this for a long time and booking as much as I have that if you do enough of these things with every client, you're going to book more of them for more money, much more quickly. So one of those pieces is giving your client proposal options. And this, I know a lot of people, this is controversial to some people, they don't like it. I'm not a proponent, as you know, of giving someone just a list of a la carte items. That's a recipe for disaster.
Oh, yeah.
So that gives people decision fatigue and the confused mind says no, so you won't win that client. So my philosophy is give them 3 options. And typically the way those options end up coming together is they have their budget option, right? This is what they think they want to spend because they don't know any better. So you give them an option for what they can get for their budget. And then you give them an option for this is everything you said you wanted, and this is what it'll cost. So the reason why I do that is because for a bunch of reasons. But number one, instead of it being a yes or no decision to hire you, it's a which option fits you
Mm-hmm.
best, right? So
Yeah.
right then and there, it increased your odds of winning that client by giving them a couple of options. And I want you to walk through those options, starting with the best one and work your way down. And you want to paint that picture. So that's one of the ways that I'm a big proponent of when you go through the proposal with people is just to explain what that proposal includes so that they understand it and you paint the picture of it so it's more visual. It's not, oh, you get these 18 things in this one and you get 12 in this one and 4 in this one. So right then and there, you're building more value and you're giving them an option of which fits best. The other thing that you're doing, and what most people don't realize, and what would save them and make them a ton of money, is that if you give them a proposal, right? So let's say they say, just for sake of argument, my budget's 5, but what they say they wanted costs 10 with you. So now you have to decide, do I give them a budget or a proposal for 5, or do I give them a proposal for 10? What do you do? If you give them a proposal for 5 and you book them, but they might have paid 10, you just left a lot of money on the table. And if you give them a proposal for 10 and they don't book you, now you lost. And now you have to chase them, which we don't do.
Yeah.
So we don't chase, we don't follow up. So I want to increase your odds of winning that client. So that's one of the reasons why I like those types of options if you're not charging a percentage. Because for the buyers at that level that you're not doing a percentage, that makes more sense. And it gives you a much more likelihood of booking that client and booking them for more. Because one of the biggest mistakes people make is they stop at people's budgets.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go above it. They're
People
afraid.
lie and people lie on their form all the time. It's not because they want to trick us, but they're going to try to get more for less. They're just, and I'll be honest, I was like, wait, I've done that before where
Mhm.
just I want to spend this, but I know in the back of my head it's this, it's going to be more. So to absolutely like do not go off of the number that they put in your inquiry form because it's up for discussion.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what you just said talked about human nature,
Yeah,
right? It wasn't gimmicky things that it won't be true tomorrow. This is how people think, and this is how they operate. And we all
right,
do the same thing, ourselves included. So
right.
understanding that is important. But that's one of the reasons why my process is the way it is, and how and why I promote three packages for majority of people, not everybody, but
Mhm.
majority. Um, there's always reasons why you might want to give a la carte things, but in general, I want you to do that so that you stack the odds to win that client. And that way you don't leave money on the table. Because I remember one of our clients, she was a floral designer. She got a client, she posted in the group, I got an inquiry for $5,000 and I booked them for 18. Now, can
Ah.
you even imagine walking away from $18,000? In most people's worlds, that would be four clients at
Yeah,
5,000 to make that
Mhm.
up. She
yeah,
booked 18 because she didn't stop at their budget. She listened to them and said, okay, I know you said your budget was five, but
yeah,
based on what you're saying, this is what it costs because blah, blah, blah. And this is what you're going to experience, right? There's no do-overs with your wedding. So
yeah.
I'll absolutely respect your budget if that's, if you've got to stay within the budget. But I never want anyone coming back to me and saying, I wish I would have known you could have done this for me.
Right.
And
Mm.
that's
And they
great
don't,
thing for people to
yeah,
use.
they
Yeah.
don't know. They don't know costs of things
Hmm.
because it varies. And they just go into it seeing a few photos on Pinterest and their friend maybe got married 8 years ago and paid 5,000, but now it's 12,000 to do the same thing. They don't know. And so they put a number that they think seems reasonable. And it's
Mhm.
our job to educate kindly and guide them, like you said, in saying we can do all of this that you want, but just so you know, this is what that's going to be. And it includes our team there from the start to the finish to make sure we're supporting you and, blah, 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 value, 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 value. But they just don't know.
Exactly. They don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what to budget because they've never
Right.
bought that before.
Hmm.
Right. Right. Oh, well, we could go on for another hour because
I know.
I mean, by the end of this, we're going to tell all your secrets, Maria. So we've got to stop ourselves. Um,
Keeps triggering like different
I
stories
know.
of my own experience. I'm like, oh yeah.
I know, Carrie. Maybe you and I will have a solo follow up to talk
Yeah.
about our stories because we've got
Yeah.
lots to tell.
Yeah.
But Maria, before we leave here, can you share a couple things, maybe two main takeaways that our listeners could implement today to start feeling a little more confident in their sales strategy? And they probably have some calls scheduled. It's still engagement season as we're recording this, so they should have some calls where they could maybe implement those as early as this week.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so a few things that they can do. One is to help stop chasing. One of my secrets to not chase is to kind of reverse engineer. So if you don't want to have to chase people like, oh, did you get my proposal? Oh, did you see it? Are you going to buy? What are your questions? Blah, blah, blah. And you don't want to sound salesy at the end and say, oh, by the way, we don't hold dates for,
Mm,
as an example. You want your process, as I said earlier, to build a sense of urgency. So one of the easiest ways for you to do that is put early in the process. So you can do this in layers and tell people, due to the number of inquiries we receive, we cannot hold dates. Like even just that statement alone says, number one, we get a lot of inquiries. And number two, we don't hold dates. So this is our process. This is how we work. These are our boundaries. This is how you do business with us. So saying that early is what makes it not salesy, because it's not a sales tactic at that point. It's I'm educating you on my business, because they
Mm.
don't know what they don't know. They don't know your business at all. They have no idea if you're getting one inquiry or 100. And when I was engaged and um, I talked to a band leader that I knew, and I said, "Oh, I love your work. Can you do our wedding, And she's like, oh, I'd love to. When is it? And I told her, and it was like 9 months out. And she said, oh, I'm sorry. We book out a year plus in advance. And I was like, holy cow, I need to light a fire under my butt and get this stuff done because I had no idea. Your clients don't know that either. So, an easy way for you to stop chasing and for you not to sound salesy at the end and tell them at the end, oh, we don't hold dates, or oh, you can think about this, but the date's not going to be there. It kind of sounds salesy. It kind of sounds like you're manipulating them. But if you tell them from the beginning and you work that into your system, into your process in the beginning, it's not salesy. It's just educating them. And it's putting a nice little fire under their butt so that they don't sit on the fence because they don't know. They have no idea. Like, remember when, you know, COVID hit and we were telling everybody, you need to educate your clients and tell them that dates are filling up like this because of all the reschedules. You need to make them aware of that. They don't know this, right? Because all they're thinking about is their wedding and rescheduling their wedding. So it's that kind of thing. Like, they don't know what they don't know. So you need to educate them. So that's one thing that they can do. You can put that in your email signature. You can put that in your email response. You can put that on your website. You can put it in your inquiry form. Could layer it in different places. You could do an Instagram post. Hey, 2025 is booking up so much faster than 2024. If you're thinking about hiring someone, a lot of the venues are already getting booked up. Like, one of my favorite venues is booked, isn't taking anything before this date, right? So those types of things help educate your client and get a fire under them so that they don't sit on the fence. So that's one easy thing that they can do. The other thing I want them to do is I want them to focus on the experience and the value that they're providing. I want them to paint a picture of what their client wants. So ask them, what's important to you with your wedding? Not every piece of a wedding is equally important to your clients. For me, it was my ceremony. And had anyone taken the time to ask me that question, then they would have found out that it was important to me because I wasn't a 20-year-old bride. So I was pretty happy that I finally found my other half. And my father was on borrowed time and I knew he wasn't going to be with us forever. And I didn't even know if he was going to make it to the wedding. Had someone asked me that question, it would have gotten me out of my logical brain and into my emotional brain. And then I would have said, the ceremony is important. And I'm willing to spend anything on that because I want that experience. And in my head, I had my father walking me down the aisle. I had the church doors opening, the trumpets, like I had the whole thing in my head. Had someone asked me that question, price would not have been an issue because I would have gotten out of my blinders. I got to check this box, hire this pro, right? And get to the next thing. I would have gotten out of that and into what really matters. So ask your client, what matters to you? What's important to you? Why is that important to you? Like, dig in a little bit. Find out what's important because you want them to connect with that, because not only will it help them understand what you can do, but you can better communicate what you can do for them when you know that. So it's what most people aren't doing. And vote on that. So if you do that one thing, you're going to make such a difference in your sales conversations that you're not going to get as much ghosting. You're not going to get as much chasing because you're painting that picture and you're really talking in terms of benefits and emotions and what matters to them and how you can specifically help them get that picture on their big day.
Love it.
I love that. That's something that I consistently do. And I think I always remember you talking about your wedding. And I'm like, oh, it's such a good question. Because I think, like Gabby said earlier, a lot of times people are like, what's your guest count? Like, are you getting hotels? Like, what, all of these really like factual things. And I think diving into the emotion is so important. Maria, thank you so much. This was so great. I know, like Gabby said, we could talk about sales all day, and I'm sure you could too, but I hope our listeners found this really helpful. I know we talked about a lot of stuff that even I'm like, okay, I need to go back and like freshen up and figure out my sales again for the year. But thank you for coming on. And I hope, all of our listeners can take this advice and, start making some sales in the coming weeks and, this year. So, Jabbers, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Um, we will link all of your everything in the description. I was gonna say too in the ad, Carrie, will
Yeah.
it'll probably say at the end, we'll probably say like uh our link is
In the show
in the
notes.
show notes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
perfect.
Yeah.
And where we can find Maria
Awesome.
online and stuff like
Perfect.
that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, this
Yeah, this
I
was
am
great.
so
I
glad we
feel
did
like
this.
motivated.
Me too. I'm like, note to self, don't follow up. You always freaking follow up. Stop following up. I'm not gonna follow up this year. Oh, I forgot. I always forget about that. So I need to go re-listen to
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
module.
It's not like you never, ever, ever follow up. Like Joan's got a good system where it automatically sends an email after certain
Yeah.
days. So in that way, she's not like emotionally getting